Time for another Chevrolet Sportsnet Central update. Jaylen Brown has missed the Celtics' last 2 games with a finger laceration. Jaylen needed 5 stitches to close the cut, which he suffered while picking up a glass vase he knocked over while watering his plants on Thursday night. Brown insisting he will be ready for Game 1 of the playoffs on Saturday afternoon, and Brad Stevens doesn't sound too worried either.
I think he'll be practicing by middle to the end of the week and be fine. So we're okay there.
Nothing to see here. Phil Perry deep diving this with me along with Cedric Maxwell. Max, I mean, is there nothing to see here with Jaylen Brown? I mean, it's his right hand. That's his shooting hand. It's like kind of like in between the fingers. It's stitches. Like, I don't know. Does that affect the way someone shoots the basketball?
I don't think it should. I think if you're talking about one of the fingers and you were shooting with that finger, I think it's a difference. But if you think about Jaylen playing and the way he plays, hopefully, and Brad Stevens is not worried about it. I'm not worried about it. So I think everybody can kind of rest assured that they feel very comfortable. They're not going to put him out on the floor in harm's way.
I know when I'm shooting, Trenni, I usually have the ball on my fingertips. Yeah. So if the cut's not on the fingertips, Max, I think he's right. Like, that shouldn't impact him all that much. I do wonder, in all honesty, if the time off, like if you go a week or a couple weeks without shooting a basketball, if that leads to any rust. But whoever they end up seeing in the first round, I'm just not that worried about it. I could have Jaylen Brown kind of shaking off some rust for 3 or 4 games and be okay with it.
All right, well, nice little segue there. We are going to move on to the playoffs. Meanwhile, the Celtics did wrap up their regular season yesterday with their 57th win of the year. It's the 3rd most wins by a franchise over the last 35 years. However, some people, like Mike Felger on Sports Sunday, they are not impressed.
You do realize they choked away home court in the playoffs the last 2 months, right? You do understand the regular season was a bit of an underachievement, correct? I mean, they were 5.5 games ahead of the Bucks in late January, and they still blew that lead despite having a healthier roster and an easier schedule, never mind a better team than Milwaukee. But like I said, I feel like I'm the only one pointing that out, so once again, I'm the a-hole.
Max, once again, is Felger the a-hole? Like, is he wrong?
The man said it. Let him have it, Trenni. The man said he's an a-hole. You know, get out of the way, all right? That's what he says. Let him stick with what the Bruins are doing over there. I think that if you look at the Celtics, think of their year and having Joe Mazzulla come in the beginning of the year, I think this team has had a great year. Now, was there a little downtime for them? Yes, there was. And some injuries that they had to go through. But if you look at them overall, what they've done, this team has played great basketball, and you've gotten Derek White has been sensational, and Brogdon has come in, and he's going to be a difference maker.
I mean, Phil, like, listen, I was certainly frustrated with the way that the Celtics played, in particular in February coming out of the All-Star break. And it did feel like they had an opportunity to maintain the momentum and get that #1 seed. But the Bucks were also a wagon. They won, I think, what was it, like 16 or like 19 of 20 games? So that, I mean, like, to me, it's as much about what the Bucks did versus what the Celtics didn't do. And that's sort of a departure for me because I was frustrated with the way that the Celtics played down the
And I think it was fair to be frustrated because there were stretches where they just weren't playing well. But I do think when you look at what Max is saying, big picture, especially with how the season began, they lost their head coach and they brought in a guy who had never been a head coach before, and he was tasked with leading what was supposed to be one of the best teams in basketball, and everybody knew it before the season began. For them to come away from this year with 57 wins, at the end of things, that to me is still pretty impressive.
Yeah, Max, not to be like nitpicky, but the one thing that bothers me most about what Felger says is he talks about them underachieving. But when you look back, if you look back at what we all expected from them going into this year, even before everything happened with Joe Mazzulla, they were never picked to be the best team in the East, even coming off the finals last year. They were picked to be somewhere between 2 and 4 when everything all shook out. I don't know why, and maybe that was people underestimating them, but I don't feel like they underachieved.
I really don't. I don't think they underachieve. I think that they are kind of where we thought they might be. I think they really, in the beginning of the year, everybody said automatically when they won all those games, everybody said, oh, the best team. Sean Grande, my broadcast partner, the greatest offense in the history of offenses. Well, hold your wagons for a minute because you still have 82 games to go. I think that you look at this team this year, you tell me what team you're going to have. Is this the team that went down here in the last couple of weeks and played the Washington Wizards? and lost to a team that isn't even going in the playoffs, but the next night had Milwaukee down by 42 points. This is what, concerns me about this team, playing up or down to the level of the competition.
Yes, and they are going to have to play up to the competition because the playoffs start on Saturday, and the Celtics will face the winner of tomorrow's play-in game between the Heat and the Hawks. Miami gave the C's all they could handle in the playoffs last year, and Jimmy Butler already with a chip on his shoulder.
It's all the same. Didn't nobody pick us to win last year either, so who cares? Y'all not going to pick us to win this year. Still don't give a damn. In 10 years, y'all still not going to pick us. Still don't give a damn.
Cool.
Phil, you said nobody worries you. You said, I'm not worried about anybody in the first round. You're not even like the slightest bit concerned about Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat?
Nope. Celtics are way more talented. The Heat have trouble scoring. Jimmy Butler disappeared for about a week during their series last year, and I understand he almost beat them at the end of that thing, but the Celtics, to me, are a better team this year. They're more talented. Malcolm Brogdon is a huge factor. Robert Williams has looked good of late. This is not a concern for me. I'm sorry. Yes, you're right, Jimmy Butler. I won't pick you to win this series, and I wouldn't in 10 years, in hindsight, because I think we'll look back at this series, if it happens, Max, and we'll probably say, hey, remember when the Celtics beat the Heat in 5 in round 1 of the 2023 NBA playoffs?
I think that is so possible. But Eric Spoelstra and Jimmy Butler put a little twinge in my heart when I start thinking about how they play and what he brings to the table. There's a certain way that you see these guys play, and they play up to another level when they play against the C's. I think the Celtics definitely are the better team, and they will beat them. They will beat Miami probably in 5. But still, there's just a slight little hint of fear in my heart sometimes when I think about the Miami Heat and what they can do.
Anytime the head coach, though, to me, Trenni, is the first name you mention when you're talking about a team that you fear
I think you mentioned
in the
Jimmy
NBA,
Butler
he mentioned him.
first.
But everybody mentions Eric Spoelstra, and it's like the head coaching matchup. Like, that's going to decide the series. That's just not today's game.
What does scare you about him, Max? What causes a little twinge?
Well, I think that Jimmy Butler scoring, Tyler Hero getting hot from the outside, knocking down shots. There's some scores. Bam has done a terrific job again this year of playing the game. So they have some players. But overall, I'm like Phil, at the end of the day, if you start adding up the pieces, the Celtics have more pieces consistently than Miami, and they should win this series without any doubt.
Yeah, maybe they won't take the Heat lightly, and maybe so they'll actually come, because the Celtics can play down to their competition from time to time. All right, let's take a look at the Ford Big Board. Built for America, built Ford proud. Jason Tatum becoming the first Celtic in franchise history to average more than 30 points in a season. Bird never did it. Havlicek never did it. Russell never did it. So quite the accomplishment for Jason Tatum. And Tatum taking pride in it. Tweeting, now this is something, prayer emoji, you would think that was harmless, but some people suggesting Tatum cares more about stats than winning, and he's not the only one under the microscope. Jaylen Brown, well aware of his stats, making his case for All-NBA to the Boston Globe, saying to Gary Washburn, I think I'm more than deserving. This is the second best team in the league. I've played nothing but winning basketball, helped lead my team, and I'm in the top 10 in scoring, and I'm efficient. I guess you look at the criteria, and I think I more than meet it. We've dominated for the most part of the season. I've been available. What more do people want? Bleep it. I'm campaigning for myself. All right, so Max, people have an issue with this because there are some people out there who look at this and say, I hate when these two guys do this. They're worried more about individual stats than they are about the team winning. It used to bother me, but the more that I pay attention just to society as a whole, I'm like, no, these two 20-something guys are like every other 20 and 30-something person on the planet. They push their brand. They try to make the most money that they possibly can when they can. And everybody's all about me these days. But yet, people can still go out and accomplish something. Like, I no longer see this as I'm worried about my individual stats. It's I'm worried about my individual stats, but I also want to win a title.
Well, I'm going to be like you, Trenni. I'm going to be with the choir. Me. It happens like that. You think about young people and TikTok. I was walking through the airport yesterday and walked through a TikTok video. I didn't know what the hell was going on. So young kids, they do have a different perspective. It doesn't bother me that he talked about it. And frankly, with Jaylen, it doesn't bother me. And Brown doesn't bother me because they ask him a question. and they ask him, does he deserve to be on all NBA team? And if you are a basketball player and you're speaking for yourself, now I don't mind that. But at the end of the day, what I really am concerned about is just winning. If these guys win a ring, that is what defines them. That's what's going to make them a legacy. That's when they have both their jerseys retired one day.
First of all, guys have cared about their brands for a long time, right? I mean, obviously, Jordan, Kobe, Shaq, you don't just have to be in your 20s to care about your brand and pushing your own individual success. So this has happened for a long, long time, and it hasn't prevented guys from being great winners in the past. The other reason why I like this, I'm fine with this, is because we should want guys to have individual success here in Boston, because Boston and the Celtics in particular have not always been a quote-unquote destination for people. And if these two guys show that you can be a legit superstar in Boston, that to me can only mean good things for this team and this franchise moving forward.
I think the bigger difference, though, Phil, is now they have so many platforms to push themselves, right? Like they can push themselves on Instagram. And
you don't think Jordan would have been on TikTok or Shaq?
Well, we don't know. Because
Penny Hardaway had commercials. Paul Pierce had his own shoe. I mean, this is something that's been in the NBA for decades. We shouldn't care about this.
I don't disagree. I agree with you. That's just when you're in the public eye, you have to push. You are your brand, so you have to push that for yourself. Max, did you push yourself? Did you have your own shoe?
I'm from Wisconsin. I'm all about cheese, okay? Don't worry about that. So I push my cheese brand all over the place. Young kids are going to do what young kids do all the time. They're going to advance their cause. But at the end of the day with the Celtics, you have to win a championship for you to be significant. And all those stats, you can throw them to the side until you win a championship. That's the only thing that matters.
Max, did you ever care about your individual stats?
Be honest, Max.
Yes, I did.
Of course. Okay.
Yes, I did. I led the league in field goal percentage twice. And several times I remember they said, why don't you take that shot? I'm like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. It might not break my field goal percentage up. So, yeah, you do think about that. But the biggest accomplishment I've ever had would be Finals MVP. Gentlemen and ladies, there's only 33 people who have ever been Finals MVP. And damn it, you're talking to one of them right now.
We bow at the altar of Max.
Thank you very much. Thank you, people.
Look, and the sun's just shining in on Max and his glorious nature. All right, Max, thank you. Stick with us.
Get the trophy in the background.
Sports Boston for complete coverage of the Celtics all throughout the postseason. Celtics playoff coverage is presented by Arbella Insurance and your New England Ford dealers.